Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Alder Hour, your favourite way to end your workday. Now, it's about 8 o'clock here in the UK, so it may not be the end of your workday where you are, but let's just get into the spirit of the end of the workday. I'm Matt Alder. I'm the host of the Recruiting Future podcast and also the host of the Alder Hour. The show is part of the Purple Acorn Network. If you want to find out more about Purple Acorn, then head over to purpleacornnetwork.com. You can also follow Purple Acorn on LinkedIn, where all the live shows are broadcast, including obviously this one. This episode is also going to be available as a podcast afterwards, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you're watching, and I know that lots of you will be, please join in. It's a live show, so get interactive, send us a message in the comments, and we will try our best to read it out and engage with you. So it's your opportunity to be on the show. So, without further ado, I'd like to say hello to my two amazing co-hosts. And there they are. Hi, Rhona, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm all right. Yes, not bad for a Monday. And welcome back, Robin.
I know.
2 weeks in a row.
I'm loving the opportunity to pop in and talk with the two of you.
Well, it's brilliant. It's brilliant to have you. Brilliant to have you back. What's everyone got for the show tonight? Give us a bit of preview. Rhona, what are we talking about?
So it's conference season, and I'm talking about trends at conferences.
Awesome. When is it not conference season?
True.
That's my question.
True.
But yeah, looking forward to that. And Robin, what do you have for us?
We're going to talk about something, perhaps with a little a spin on it, and that's the posting of ghost jobs. But this is with a little bit of nefarious activities underlying it, perhaps. So
interesting. Big topic, ghost jobs. So yeah, looking forward to that one. Sorry, my voice is going already. We're only 2 minutes into the show. So I think I probably need a drink.
Yes.
In which case, let's go to Points and Pints. Okay, so we are going to look at a couple of headlines from the news. And while we do that, I am going to drink a pint of this week. So this is Innis & Gunn lager beer. It's made in Edinburgh, so just up the road. Obviously a big fan of local beer at the moment. This is one of my favourite lagers ever. So it's very, very good. I'm not sure where they export it or where they sell it, but it's fantastic. But this is the alcohol-free version, and I've never had it before. So this could be fantastic, or it could be a huge disappointment. We'll have to see. Rhona, I know you've got a drink as well. You brought one along.
Yes.
What do you have?
I have Two Chicks Cocktails. It's from Canada, woman-owned, woman-operated business, and I've had it in my fridge for a year, and I thought today was a great day to try it.
Absolutely. We're all about drinking stuff from Canada, definitely.
Yeah.
Robin, you don't have anything, do you? We're just
I sadly have a glass, a lovely, jug of water.
Ah, well, that's good. Right, let's pour this out. So let's hope this is not going to be a huge disappointment. Okay, so it looks paler than it normally does. Let's give it a go. Pretty good. How's the cocktail?
It's really fuzzy, but it's really good.
No, this is all right. This is yes, almost tastes like the actual lager itself. So that's good. That could have been really disappointing. So let's move on to our first headline. Deep trouble. What is the fuss about DeepSeek, and why does it matter to HR? This has been such a fascinating piece of news to follow. If you've not been following this piece of news, DeepSeek was a large language AI, generative AI model released by a Chinese company I think a couple of weeks ago now. There's been so much news this year. I don't know, it feels like 6 months ago, but it probably was a couple of weeks ago. And it's caused a storm. It's caused a storm because people didn't realize that China were kind of working on something so sophisticated, but also it's been developed incredibly cheaply compared to some of the Gen AI systems that are being developed elsewhere, particularly in the US. So a massive reminder that things are never predictable. I think that's the first thing. That's the first thing to say. It's really funny because for a lot of the chat about AI has been the amount of power that it uses and the expense of it, and so much so that a couple of weeks ago there was a big announcement that the US were kind of signing off a $500 billion budget to build nuclear power stations to power the AI of the future. And then this has come along and kind of turned things on its head because it's been made much more cheaply. And it's really interesting from that perspective, just in terms of sort of predicting the future, because, as I say, a lot of the commentary about AI has been, well, it can't develop further because it uses so much power. What are we gonna do? And that now potentially turned on its head. And it's a reminder that we can't predict the future based on the way that things are now. And I was trying to think of an example of this, and I thought about this the other day. So back in the sort of 70s and 80s, for those of you who can remember back that far, presuming you were born, we used to talk a lot about fossil fuels, oil and gas, and that they were going to run out. So, by this point in time, 2030, 2040, whatever, we'd have no more fossil fuels and we'd have no more energy. So that was why we talked about alternatives, wind power, wave power, all that kind of stuff. But technology moved on. Which meant they could find more oil and gas and also change the way that it's used. And now we talk about green energy as a way to stop burning oil and gas, and we don't want to find any more. So it just shows you that, the way that people have kind of predicted the future with AI isn't necessarily what's going to happen. And there's obviously big implications for this. The article is quite negative in some respects about them. There's obviously some very big implications for the large American technology firms who felt that they had a bit of a monopoly on this and were investing a huge amount of money. Also, this model is open source, so people can see how it was built. I've already heard that someone's already replicated it, and I suppose that there's another implication in terms of that really it potentially democratizes access to AI. Hopefully, it'll make things cheaper. It'll make things easier for people to use. Now, obviously, implications that this has come from China about security and privacy and all that kind of stuff. But the principle of it, I think is a fantastic thing. If we're going to save energy, save money, and have AI that we can move on and implement in more places. What does everyone else think? Robin, what are your thoughts on DeepSeek and its implications?
Yeah, I think two things. I think the first is the astonishment, I guess, that struck me, especially on the heels of all the TikTok chatter. But I was just astonished at how quickly the masses willingly signed up and handed over all their, potentially bits and pieces to China, right? So here we go. Let's just quick sign up. Off we go. Quick go test it. That struck me. And the second piece that struck me, to your point about democratization, the tendency of, and we're talking HR and talent folks here, so I'm going to stick to the HR profession, but this could apply to anybody. The tendency in smaller and mid-sized businesses around a lot of technology, around AI really, and chat GPT has been, I can kind of use those things, but I really don't have to maybe pay attention because I'm with a SMB and it's gonna be a long time before that stuff comes into my world. Well, guess what? It's not going to be a long time.
No, exactly. I think that's a stunning point. I think it just, you're right. From an HR perspective, makes it even more important and more urgent that people understand this. Rhona, what do you think?
Yeah, and that's a great point that you made, Robin. But also, I think as HR people, we really have to start thinking about how we're going to create environments in our companies for people to be learning these things. Because
Yeah.
as you were saying, everything is changing so quickly. We can't predict how quickly it's going to change. What we can do is get ready to be able to compete with all of these things and learn all of these things by providing those spaces and like creating an environment for true learning and development so that the conversations aren't always how many people are we going to replace
Hmm.
because of this, but
Hmm.
are more like how are we going to leverage the people that we have to use this technology that's out here and then win against competitors or whatever.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And I think that it's probably safe to say this isn't going to be the only sort of AI shock news that comes out this year. I'm sure there's more. There's more where that came from. So just please everyone educate yourselves and work out what the implications are, because it's not going away, and it kind of applies to all of us.
Hmm.
Let's move on to the next one. So there we are. Trump administration offers buyouts to federal workers. One of the many headlines that we've had in the last 7 days from the new US president. There is so much that we could say about this. So
So
I
much.
just so much we could say. So I just kind of wanted to sort of focus on a couple of things that we could maybe talk about. I mean, before that, the fact that the email title was exactly the same as the one that Elon Musk sent out to Twitter when he bought Twitter was, it was kind of, yeah, it sort of told us everything we wanted to know.
Hmm.
So the two things that I want to kind of focus on, the first one is about unintended consequences. So anyone who's been in a company where there's been really kind of quick layoffs knows that, people get laid off quickly. Where's the process of knowledge transfer? What happens? There can be horrific sort of unintended consequences from, doing something this quickly. And we're not talking about a company here. We're talking about the federal government. We're talking about, people with, unique skill sets that cover a huge amount of, areas. So, to do this across such a vast selection of people just seems like a kind of insane thing to do without any seeming kind of new due diligence or anything like that. So I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is, I just really wanted to focus on the people, the employees, the people who work there. The trauma that this must cause. Even the question is like, is this even legal? Is this is this even something that could happen? Is this something that's going to be kind of honoured? So I think it's just really important to think about people, government employees who are affected by this, people who are providing, essential services. I mean, everyone knows that governments can be inefficient and government administration can be inefficient. But don't demonize the people. I mean, I think some of the rhetoric about, low skilled, lazy people working from home have just been appalling. And it's kind of like using human beings as a political football.
Hmm.
And it's not just in the US. I've seen it happen in the UK as well. So some of the parties on the right have been saying very similar things about the UK public sector. And in fact, in the last government, the I'm not going to even mention his name, but the guy who was Minister for Government Efficiency and Brexit Opportunities, yes, the less said the better. He actually went round one of the government offices, leaving notes on people's desks. These are people who work from home, leaving notes on their desks to say, "Oh, I came round to visit you. What a shame you weren't in." So just that passive aggressive horribleness. So politicians aren't going to stop doing this, unfortunately, but people need to stop believing them when they say these things about these people. What do you think, Rhona? What do you think about this?
I mean, government jobs have historically been, or at least that's what I've heard, the more stable ones. The employees have always been the ones who are like, well, yeah, this is more stable. Nothing really is going to happen to my job. And now, just to come in and within days of a new administration, all of this shock to them, they're not as used to it as unfortunately we in the private sector are to this type of thing. So I think that's where I went immediately. It's like, oh my gosh, these poor people, their world is being rocked.
Mm.
And also we have to consider, and this is something most people don't like to admit, but these people that are now going to be without jobs coming into the private sector has a lot of bias against people in the public sector. So it's like, how is that going to look as far as jobs? So those were my initial thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Robin, what do you think?
Yeah, I've been consumed with this story over the last couple of weeks, actually. One thing that strikes me is this tendency for us to continue to use, or headlines, use the term buyouts, because they're really not buyouts. They're not buyouts in the way that, again, we'll often think of, here's a severance package when you're in the private sector. The folks are expected to continue working through September, and with the ability to continue to work from home and get paid through the end of September. So that's one thing. Again, like many things in this crazy first 13 days of this administration, stuff is not thought out, right? So they're truly not buyouts in many respects. The secondary piece, and to Rhona's point about the people, there's a subreddit group called Fed News that I have been just entranced with, and it's a subreddit that's been around for a long time, and it's federal employees who have generally used it over the course of time to talk about, where do I get information on how to retire and what that process is, and when are the new, pay scales coming out. Very boring. It is now the site of, it's like, first it was what's going on, where can we get information, and now it's this site of federal workers kind of, coming together in solidarity and saying, we're gonna fight this. I care about my job. I've spent 20, 30, whatever years working for the government, and I did so, and I took an oath to the Constitution, and I can't believe that they're just basically shoving us out. And it's to Rhona's point, it's seeing the humans behind this.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's the big sort of takeaway for me. But as I say, there was so much around this that we could talk about. But it is a big situation. So let's move to the Situation Room. So, Robin.
So,
what's going on?
So here's the situation. Here's another potential secret that people are finding out about some things that HR or TA departments are maybe doing. I'm not sure that I quite believe the entirety of this post that I've referencing here, but we've all heard the talk about employers posting ghost jobs, right? It's jobs that don't really exist. We've talked about this forever. The reasons are varied, perhaps why someone would post a ghost job. I want to gather a slew of candidates to maybe have on hand for something down the road. I just kind of want to see who's out there, so I'm posting this ghost job. Well, this conversation takes it a step further, and I'm interested to see your thoughts on this, Matt. If you think this is real or not, because I'm a little skeptical. If it's true, it's somewhat diabolical.
Okay.
It's really doing some A/B testing with people's livelihoods, kind of hanging on the balance. And so the secret that this person told, again, you can tell we hang out on Reddit a lot, right? But in this subreddit, is about they know someone who's an HR manager who said that their practice is to post a job to see how desperate people are for work. And so they'll take a job. So I'm going to say, here's, clerk one, two, clerk one. I'm going to post this clerk one job at salary X and run that for a while and see how many applicants I get. And then a month later, I'm going to post that exact same job and lower the salary by $10,000, $20,000, whatever it might be, and run that and see how many numbers I get. And then gradually over the course of months, continue to post that same job. It's not open, so here's the ghost job part of it. But I'm going to post that job and keep playing with either the salary, continue to lower the salary, see where that threshold might lie. What are people willing to apply for? And then even get to the point where, I might take some of the benefits out. We're not offering those benefits, these benefits, or there's work from home or there's not, or whatever. And so it's kind of playing this game.
And they're measuring the number of applications for each version of the job, allegedly. Yeah.
Yes. The so in this particular case of what this person was talking about, they didn't reference a title. We're not even quite sure in this story what what the title was, but good paying job. Started posting at $160K with benefits. Started to lower that over time, and started to track the number of benefits. So it started with 6,000 applicants in a month. As they started to lower it, 6,000, then 5,000 one month. By the time they halved the salary several months later on this job posting, instead of 6,000 applicants, they got 2,000 applicants. So they were, again, apparently keeping track of this sort of what's that number at which, applicants are going to drop off, and does that help guide our salary? Well, first of all, if you're an organization and you're using that to guide your compensation philosophy, you've got a whole lot more problems than just wasting your recruiter's time to go out and post, fake jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would, certainly come in there and advise that, quote, HR department to, perhaps work with someone to help develop a compensation philosophy and some guidelines on what that means and what that should look like.
Yeah. It's no, it's crazy. It's one of those. It's just one of those things that you think maybe this company is doing that. I mean, maybe they're not, but it certainly, I don't believe it's something that's widespread.
Yeah.
More than anything else, most employers aren't sophisticated enough in their recruitment marketing to A/B test anything, let alone salaries and all that kind of stuff. And I guess a lot of it comes from this sort of ghost jobs phenomenon, which has just sort of taken off online. I'm kind of seeing people writing about it all the time. An expert on ghost jobs, and this is what's happening. And I think we know that inside the industry, there are lots of reasons why there are ghost jobs. Most of them to do with technology and admin and stuff like that, and job boards. Job boards buying jobs off each other, and it's just it's crazy, and it's a terrible situation for candidates. But most of the time, it's not. It's kind of not on purpose. It's not done. It's not done deliberately. So I wonder whether this is someone trying to find a kind of a retrofit an explanation into why these ghost jobs are there.
I think that might be part of it, because I think there is this, there's this human tendency perhaps to, and you get it, right? If I'm someone who has struggled, perhaps I was laid off and I'm struggling to find my next gig for whatever reason. I'm competing with lots of folks. I'm not getting any traction. It can be, human nature, right, to find a reason for that. And one of the reasons that I might come up with is, I'm competing with all these people, but I'm also, I think a lot of these jobs out there are fake. So, it's sort of the conspiracy theory world around employment and hiring
Yeah, and it kind of reflects the market, doesn't it? I think that there's a certain kind of bias that people have sometimes where they see an advert and they see themselves in that job because it
Yeah,
fits them perfectly.
yeah,
Then they don't kind of hear back because everyone's process is nonsense. But actually, it makes them feel like, well, I couldn't possibly not be getting this job, so
right.
there must be something else going on. So yeah, I think you're right. Unfortunately, there's a lot of sort of speculation and stuff that becomes fact to try and sort of fill this fill
Mhm.
this fill this gap here. But I think the takeaway from this is that this is not the way to work out your compensation
Yeah.
and benefit
No, please
strategy.
don't. Please don't.
Yeah, no. Yes, please don't do that. So yeah, as I say, it was really interesting. But
Mhm.
and it may be that this company is doing that, but I don't think this is a widespread thing.
I don't
Absolutely.
either.
No, perfect. Well, awesome to talk to you.
Thanks so much.
Let's, yeah, as always. I'm sorry you don't have a drink.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's move on to our guest. Hey, how's Serge? How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Matt?
I'm very good. I'm very good. This feels like a kind of an outside broadcast. I feel you're our kind of roving reporter for this episode. Why don't you? Well, first of all, quickly introduce yourself for people who may not have seen your fantastic work and your fantastic work on the HR Morning Show, and then tell us where you are and why you're there.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so Serge Bordreau. I am the weatherman on the HR Morning Show, which I try to bring some controversial topics around the world of work and HR every week. I am also the VP of Partnerships at Resume Wallet. C Squared Technology is our holding company. And I've been around this space for around 25 years, had a very popular podcast called The Recruitment Flex, which I had you on for many times. And
Absolutely, yeah. Love that
this,
show. Love that show.
I miss it some days. I do
Yeah,
miss it, but
yeah.
having a lot of fun. I am here in San Diego. And actually, Matt, this is the first time I've ever been in San Diego. And it's a beautiful city. And I'm here for Talent Acquisition Week, which actually just kicked off this morning, but it really kicks off tomorrow, is where all the action is. But there's a fun party this afternoon, a bunch of breakout sessions. I've seen a lot of practitioners and TA leaders. I've been trying to pick their brain as much as I can. So yeah, no, I'm excited to be here for TAWeek. Have you ever been to TAWeek, or is that?
Do you know what? I've never been to TAWeek, which I'd love to. I'd love to go.
That's
I'd love to go next time, definitely. I have been to a conference in San Diego before because ERE used to be in
Yes.
San Diego back in the day. So I think I went in 2012, 2011, something like that, a really long time ago. But it's a fantastic city, and I had a great time. So, very very jealous that you're there right now. Tell us a bit, what's going on at the conference? What's the content? What's the kind of mood? Are you talking to people who are there? What's top of everyone's minds?
Yeah, so looking at the sessions that are today, there is a lot about employment branding, especially AI and employment branding is something that I've seen actually in a couple of sessions, but a lot overall just best practice of what's going on in this world. And as you've seen, it's changing so dramatically. Just like DeepSeek is a perfect example of just like how what we know today might be completely different tomorrow, and that's what we're seeing in the world of HR tech. But like what I've noticed in asking a lot of, like, I asked several practitioners, like, what's your biggest concern right now? What's keeping you up awake, up at night? And I think the biggest answer is depending on the type of roles they're hiring. So
Mm,
if it's blue collar, they're not getting enough candidates. If it's
right.
white collar, they're getting way too many, and they're not 100% sure that these candidates are actually real, which after doing some investigation and trying to contact, a lot of them are not real. Or actually, that's not fair to say. They're real, but are they responding to messages? How many jobs have they applied to? Do they even know they applied to your job? So
So
teams
ghost jobs and ghost candidates. Lots of
exactly.
ghosts. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what they're trying to figure out, right? And where
Mm,
is why can't I find qualified candidates for the type of roles that I'm looking for, with the majority of not being, and like not being qualified is subjective in that
Yep.
sense, but I think they're struggling to find those right fits. With blue collar, they just want more candidates. So speaking to a lady that's hiring, it's basically kind of maintenance workers, and she was telling me like she will post a job and get zero applicants even as they increase the pay, where it used to be like 30-40% more than it was 5 years ago, and they still can't get candidates. So we're kind of dealing with a unique scenario of, depending on what you're recruiting for, is you're either overwhelmed or you're not getting enough, or you're not getting any, and you have to really adjust your strategy to what it is. But overall, I think people are optimistic about, especially the American economy. I think they feel that this year is going to be good, which is a
Mhm.
good sign, right? Like, I think if we're hiring and we're seeing some good movement, I think it's really good for the talent acquisition community, because you need to hire more recruiters. And I've always said we're the canary in the coal mine. We're the first to get laid off, and we're the first to get hired when they're going to need to hire more as an organization.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I suppose to pick up on a couple of points that you made there, I want to come back and talk about DeepSeek in a minute, because I'm sure you got a perspective on that. But just in terms of the unpredictable nature of everything at the moment, which in fairness, it's been like this for at least 5 years, but
Yeah.
it just seems to kind of accelerate and accelerate and accelerate. What would your advice be to sort of TA professionals when the rules are changing about AI on a weekly basis? There's just kind of so much going on, so much is unpredictable. How should people think about that? How should they be planning? How do you deal with such an unpredictable situation?
Well, I don't think it's going to slow down of how unpredictable it's going to be in the future. So I think, but we tend to overreact in a lot of ways, right? Like, if you think about uh, what we used to do 20 years ago, like, some has changed. Technology has changed how we do it, but it's basically the same. Like, human nature is we prefer to deal with humans. And I think we have to stick with that. But if we're looking at AI, and I think one of the things that I've been doing a lot of research and trying to figure out is just the amount of candidates that are flowing through, say, lazy apply bots, and how do you deal with those types of things. And I think as an organization, as an HR leader, there's only really a couple ways you can do it. It's like, you need to verify. You need to
Mhm.
verify. I think the future of talent acquisition, and I'm biased because I'm in that space, is verifying credentials and leveraging humans in the talent acquisition process is going to be critical. If you asked me 2 years ago, I'd be like, do we really need, and this, do we really need humans in every step of the process, right? Like, when we
Yeah.
talk about screening or anything like that, I would say no. I don't think candidates care. They just cared about getting hired. But I've changed my thinking, because I think if we automate it to a point, we're going to be dealing with just like these ghost candidates, ghost jobs, these lazy apply bots that even we're seeing companies building out like kind of solutions to eliminate them. It's not that easy. I live in that world, and you eliminate the bots and they find a way around it, and they keep finding a way around it. So verification of those credentials or those candidates is going to be critical. And I think you should, if you're a TA leader, you should try to figure out how you're going to do that at scale, right? The
Mm.
other side of it, I'm not saying you need to hire more recruiters or anything, but they need to be involved in the process, and there needs to be that human to human connection fairly early on in the process, if possible. I think that's, there's going to be a counterculture to what AI is bringing to the space of, yeah, no, we do need those human connections. One, it's a better candidate experience. The other side of it too is like, how are we actually going to verify these people are real if we're not having real conversations?
Yeah, I think they're really interesting. They're really interesting points. I mean, I think the thing to say though is I think that when it comes to automation, it's still going to go a lot further than a lot of people are currently
Yeah,
thinking. I think
yeah,
that's one of the things. I think there is still a kind of sense of complacency that actually things aren't going to change at all.
you're
We'll
right.
always need human recruiters and things like that. But that's not what you're saying, is it?
No, we will need human recruiters, but I think when we look at all the tasks that as a recruiter myself that I hated doing, I think those should disappear, right? Like I remember spending 50% of my time just booking interviews, which in reality that should be done, right? Like
Yeah.
interview notes, running candidates through the process as far as communication outside of having that conversation. You can automate or leverage AI as much as you can because it's going to give a better candidate experience. But we still need that human recruiter at one point to have that real conversation. And I see a recruiter as a little bit different. I see it as an account manager. Basically, you're dealing with the hiring managers. Your job is to make sure they're happy, and you're the account manager for the candidates. You make sure they're flowing through the process. You can answer any questions. So an account manager is kind of like what it's not going to replace a recruiter, but it's kind of
Mm.
what the role is going to be, right? Because sourcing is not, man, this is my personal opinion, it's not as critical as used to be. There is so many tools that can find those candidates and have that at least initial reach out. That was a big part of TA.
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's still going to exist, but I think a lot of what we did on a daily basis as a recruiter for many years is just changing. But at
yeah.
the end of the day, relationships internally and externally is like the skill that recruiters need.
Absolutely. And I suppose just give us your thoughts on the whole DeepSeek thing. What's kind of happening there? What do you think about it? You work for a technology company. What are the implications? What's
Well,
going on? What's going on?
when it first came out, I think it's an interesting because a lot of people, even in Silicon Valley and California, I think were excited by it, being like, oh, maybe there is competition to OpenAI. And the other factor too is OpenAI, which is the name, is actually a closed source
Mm,
compared to
mm.
DeepSeek is open source. So a lot of people in the tech industry were like, no, this is the right thing for humanity, for technology, have it open source. But I think there's a lot that we're not seeing because I am not buying that they built this for $6 million. I can't see it. And then you start looking at the trail because obviously, they built it for cheaper because there's constraints, which
Yeah,
sometimes tech is built better when there is constraints, right?
very
Like
true.
you
Yeah,
don't have unlimited resources, and in this case, unlimited chips, right? Like just the
yeah.
GPU of how big it is. They've been limited, but then you start digging in and seeing some interesting things. And I'm going a little bit in conspiracy here, Matt. So please go along with
The
me.
theme of the show, conspiracy. It's everywhere.
Yes,
It's
yes.
everywhere. The
Well, the
truth is out there.
interesting thing that I saw is the shipment of NVIDIA chips to Singapore is gone tenfold. I'm like, okay, where are those chips going, right? Like, is it true? Are we buying what DeepSeek is telling us that they've been able to leverage older, cheaper chips? Which in reality, is that the case? Is the $6 million just a testing phase? A lot of folks are asking a lot of questions, but nonetheless, this is a game changer, right? Like
Yeah,
this is showing that these types of tools are kind of going to become a commodity as far as what ChatGPT does now, like basic. And I think it's going to be kind of a brand play is going to be whoever wins this AI war as far as like agentic AI or these
yeah,
generative AI tools. It might be the brand that wins it because like they catch up to each other really, really quickly from what I
yeah.
can.
No, absolutely. But either way, I think the rules of the game have changed slightly in the last few weeks.
Oh,
Definitely.
it's going to change a lot more. I can't even fathom. I still remember when I first saw ChatGPT and I started using it. I'm like, this is a game changer. And it's like, to be honest, it's changed the way I work. I
Yeah,
use it
yeah,
frequently for things that I was really bad at. And there's some things that I used when it initially came out that I don't use anymore because I'm like, no, I don't like the copy it writes or
yeah, yeah,
things
yeah.
like that.
Exactly,
Like it's
exactly.
just become so generic in that sense. But no, it is. We're going to see a lot of progress, and I think the theme that I've talked to a couple of people here at the conference is like, what is agentic AI? How is that going to help us? How are we going to leverage that in our tech stack? And I don't have an answer right now. I do
I
not.
think that's that's a whole nother show. That's a
It
whole
is.
nother show. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, have a great rest of conference. And yeah, see you soon. Thank you
If
very
you're
much.
anyone listening that's here, come find me. I want to talk to you. I would love to talk about the Elder Hour, Purple Acorn, and Resume Wallet.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So let's move to trending or ending. Hey, hi
Hey,
Rhona.
Matt.
So conferences, tell us about it.
Yes. So, as we heard from Serge, and we've been talking about it's conference season, we know what this means. We're going to start seeing all the selfies, all the lanyards, everything all over LinkedIn. But I wanted to talk today about what's changing. What new things am I seeing at conferences? And I think first thing to talk about is like attendance trends. I have spoken to a few people. Everyone isn't going to every conference like they used to in the past, where, okay, just because your company pays for it, you just go to every single conference and it's just the thing that you do. People are being more selective about where they go to. They want the real ROI, and I don't know if it's so much that they want it or that they're being asked, okay, what's this conference for? Because it's an investment now. And that's for people that work for companies, and also for business owners like me. I know myself, looked at the list of conferences and been like, okay, which one really aligns with what I'm doing right now, and which one will I get the best ROI? Where are my people at? So that's what people are being selective about, what conferences they go to. And they want to like prioritize actual learning and networking over like surface level, you know, spectacle that conferences can be. And then there's swag, right? Let's face it, we all talk about the swag. Everyone says they hate conference swag, but everyone actually goes to conferences to see what swag they're going to get. I know I do. And the change that I've seen in swag is really moving towards like useful, quality, or experience based swag. Talking about things like custom notebooks, reusable water bottles. At the conference I was last week, Evolve in Atlanta, they even had headshots. So you could get
Cool.
professional headshots with a professional photographer. They had lighting, all of that, and you could get that for free. And the sponsors that I've been talking to for other conferences, they're all focusing also on like experience based swag. So that's one thing that's I see changing. And then networking, right? We all go to conferences to network, but gone are the days where networking is just like exchanging business cards. I didn't see actually much of that at this conference. It's more about intentional, like structured networking spaces. The conference I was at last week, they even made us switch tables halfway through because we were all sitting at different tables. And then it's like, okay, for the next half of the day, people in the back come switch to the front just so that you could meet new people. So it was very intentional, very curated networking. And I've also seen that with other conferences where they're talking and they're like, when they promote it, they're focusing on the networking opportunities that you will have. And because people are really craving the real relationships. Like after COVID, we saw the boom of everyone wanting to go back to in person. And that's still there, but people are very intentional about like, what am I going to get out of this in person thing? And I didn't want to just share my opinion today. Since I was there at Evolve last week, I asked a few people what they thought were the trends that they were seeing. And I asked attendees, and I asked organizer, and I asked sponsors as well. So stay tuned for that video later this week. I'll share it on my profile. But TLDR, people are wanting smaller, curated, events where they can really network and they can really go back to their companies and say, this is what I learned. This is what I got out of it for the conference. So What do you think, Matt? Are small conferences the way to go? Is that what you're seeing on your side of the world?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a few things about it. I'm kind of, I'm jealous of TAWeek and Evolve because I've not been to a conference so far this year. Although it is only the start of February, and I'm going to two next week in Norway. So I'll be back in the game. Yeah, I suppose to sort of look at the points one by one. Obviously the ROI thing is critical, and I think it's people thinking really about what that ROI is. So, it's ROI around networking. And if you're an exhibitor at a conference, I think it's been a really interesting trend that people are doing things. They're not just having a stand; they've got things going on around around their booth. Podcasting, for example, I've podcasted from people's booths at the last three conferences I've been to. So, they're creating something that people want to come and see on the expo floor, but it's actually also creating broader content that they can use outside of the conference. So it's kind of using the conference as a place to make that content and then kind of amplify that later on. So I think that's kind of a real smart a kind of real smart way to do sort of conferences content creation opportunity. So yeah, the ROI thing I think is it's kind of important. And I think we're kind of in that phase. I think sort of post pandemic, people sort of when it was safe, when people felt it was safe, everyone wanted to kind of rush to conferences just to see people because they'd not seen people for 2 years. But now I think we're very much at that phase where people are really thinking about why they're going and what they're getting out of it. The swag is really interesting. I mean, if we've finally seen the end of useless USB things and t-shirts that never fit me or whatever it is, it's just that's a good thing. And it's interesting, I've just read an interesting book. I can't remember the name of the author, but the book's called Giftology, and it's all about swag, and it's all about actually doing something meaningful, which obviously the experience stuff is there, things that people remember or things that people just use every day. Something that's going to keep you sort of front and center and all those kind of things. So I'm really glad that swag is evolving. And I was just kind of thinking back to, I think the last conference I went to, someone gave me this enormous branded like coffee thing, and it was like, I can't even get a coffee that big in the UK, and they put their brand on it and they put my name on it as well, which was nice, but it meant I couldn't leave it anywhere because
Yeah.
I couldn't accidentally forget to take it with me. So swag, and then networking. I think this is the crucial thing because it's the only thing that you get at a conference that you can't get online or elsewhere. That face to face networking. And I think that having been to sort of European conferences and US conferences, I think it's a much more sophisticated part of US conferences in terms of people's approach to it. So I think that people are organizing who they're networking with before they get there, but also using some of the kind of the more spontaneous opportunities. And I would say to anyone, going to a conference, just think through who you want to meet, who's there, what you want to get out of it, and have a plan before you go, because it's just kind of a crucial thing. I mean, is that what you do? Do you have a networking plan before you go, or is it all spontaneous?
I definitely have a networking plan before I go, and I'm an introvert, so I always like plan. Okay, I think these people are going, these are the sponsors that I want to see. I have a specific card that I do. Instead of a business card, I use a digital thing that I've made myself for like scanning the QR code of my LinkedIn, which I actually forgot at the hotel when I was at Evolve, but there's other ways. I had my LinkedIn QR code ready, and people just, yes, I plan it, but also there's a element of you can't really plan, so you have to be flexible in it because you
Absolutely.
don't know who's
Yeah.
going to be there.
Yeah.
And that happened at that conference last week. I had my plan. It's like, so I was speaking at the conference, and I always think, okay, after speaking, I'll go and these are the people that I'm going to reach out to. Well, there was a whole slew of people that came to me that I would have never even thought of networking with, not for any reason, but I just didn't think. And those were the people that were interested in speaking to me. So always having that, being flexible with your
Yeah.
plan, but still having a plan.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think there's that big element of spontaneity, and I've kind of sort of spontaneously, randomly, seemingly met, some fantastic, people through that at conferences over the years, people, who I still know 10, 15 years later. So I think it's, that's the key part of it. And also I think that, because of that, a lot of the networking that goes on happens at events and parties and bars and all that kind of stuff. And again, I think that is a much bigger thing in the US than it is in Europe, where people don't tend to travel as far to conferences. They might not be staying overnight. And the social side is seen as a kind of more social than perhaps in the US, where it's still social, obviously, but there's a real strong sort of networking part to it. But also, I think the other thing is, like, there are so many conferences; it's just very difficult to know which ones to go to. I mean, how many do you go to? What's your sort of yearly plan? Or do you have one? Is it spontaneous? How do you choose what conferences to go to?
So I'm a bit different than a lot of people because most of the conferences that I go to, I would only go if I'm going with a sponsor, right? Conferences that I will go to, hands down, no matter if there's a sponsor or not, it's probably two. One of them is Wreckfest because, again, I like the smaller events. That's really my thing. And I guess Wreckfest feels small, even though there's thousands of people there. But it's just the way that it's made.
Yeah.
But yeah, I tend to go more to the smaller conferences, and then any other conference that I go, it's because I'm there with a sponsor, doing whatever sponsor activation they want to be doing there.
Yeah, I think Wreckfest is a great example of kind of new thinking around conferences and just trying to do things differently and amp those kind of things up. And it's probably ironic, actually, because the UK one is so big. It's kind of like, I'll see people posting like, days afterwards and it's like, were you there? I didn't see you. So yeah, I think that, those kind of big conferences are great just for kind of the reach and the amount of people that are there. But I suppose, to answer your question from right at the beginning, I do prefer the smaller ones. I think just because, you can have, longer, more quality conversations, get around more people, and also let's not forget the content of the conferences as well. Some of
Yes.
some of the speaking and all that sort of stuff is kind of incredibly valuable.
And something that I forgot to mention earlier, where I actually just thought of it, I'm also seeing a lot of newer faces as far as speaking at conferences. And I think it has to do with a lot of these newer, smaller conferences popping up that are giving opportunities to small or like lesser known people. Because I wouldn't even say smaller. Just because you haven't been on a stage doesn't mean you have less experience than the people that have been on every single stage. So that's also something that I'm seeing where newer faces are being in the speaking space.
Which is always good to see. And I love the events that kind of really encourage that and try and get, newer faces, really kind of diverse speakers. And, that's always fantastic to see, because let's face it, who wants to hear the same old people saying something slightly different from last year every time? So I suppose it's just as a closing question to you, what's your next conference? Where are you planning on going?
To be determined.
To be
I
determined.
am speaking to a few sponsors, but it's to be determined. I won't even say anything to not jinx it.
That's fair enough. Well, I'm doing 2 in Oslo next week, and then it's Transform for me at the end of in March in Vegas. So yeah, looking forward to that. Rhona, thank you very much for talking to me.
Of course, see you next week.
Absolutely. So that is us for another week. Lots of other great content coming up on Purple Acorn. Tomorrow is the HR Morning Show, which I think they're doing live from TAWeek in San Diego. So that's that will be worth watching. Wednesdays, Hire Her Talent Collective podcast. That's at 11 a.m. on the West Coast, 2 p.m. on the East Coast. Thursday, My First Job with Mike Wood. 11 and 2 p.m. again, and then from the desk with Jada Montemorano, which is on Friday at the same time. And of course, please join us again for the Alder Hour next Monday. This is Matt Alder, clocking out.